Hey everyone, it's Wade Fransson. I am here with a very special episode of Created in the Image of God, a Holy Day episode, the Holy Day being the Declaration of the Bob. This happens to be the day on which I and my wife declared as Baha'is 17 years ago, rather. She's going to be very upset that I got that year count wrong. 17 years ago on the day that this show is airing is when we declared as Baha'is. It's a very special holy day. The Bab is the gate of God, the gate of God, a manifestation of God who declared who he was on May 23rd, 24 hours before the lightning message was sent, the first lightning message, the First Telegraph Message by Samuel Morse that said, "What hath God wrought?" on May 24th, 1844. I have with me in the studio a very special dear friend, Daniel Sanderson, to help do this show about this momentous event. Welcome to the studio, Dan.
Hey, Wade, thanks for letting me participate. I really appreciate it.
Well, I think, you're going to make a major contribution here because not only have you been looking over my shoulder, so to speak, as me being a Baha'i and interested in the Declaration of the Bab, you brought to my attention a mutual friend who I didn't realize that he had stumbled upon the writings of the Bab somewhat independently and spent a year then associating with the Baha'i community because of the power of the words and the writings of the Bab, again, known as the gate of God. And of course, my own particular interest in this topic goes back to Nimrod, the Tower of Babel, Bab El, the gate of God, and the Tower of Babel confusion, which was the tower to heaven that God said, "You're not going to build it." And the connection between the Bab and that tower, not to mention this connection, this book by Eileen Maddox, not that she per se is anything special, but she has compiled this wonderful book which looks at the convergence of prophecy in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the Baha'i faith, all of which have prophetic timelines that converge on 1844. 1844 was always in my consciousness because I knew about a man named William Miller who predicted that Christ would return in 1844. I was the member of a fervent fundamentalist group eagerly anticipating the return of Jesus. We, of course, knew that he had not returned in 1844. Or had he? Right? The Baha'is believe he did, sort of, depending on which Baha'i you talk to. But let us dive into this topic, Dan, also from a philosophical perspective. I had always viewed that philosophers tend to be more agnostic, but you and I were just talking in the studio that that's not true. Plato and Socrates focused on accountability and divine virtues.
Absolutely. Socrates said that his entire life was a preparation for death. And so when he did die, he didn't have to, number one, compromise his values in a court, but he was fine with death, and he confronted it very stoically, I suppose, although that's a loaded term because the Stoics were kind of afterwards.
Interesting. So another teaching of the Baha'i revelation is that when a manifestation of God arrives, be it Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, the Bab, Baha'u'llah, that constitutes a resurrection. The spiritually dead are brought back to life through the divine springtime, the arrival of the sun cresting over the horizon in the cyclical nature of progressive revelation. How does that mesh with what Socrates or Plato taught?
Well, the wisdom and the teachings of people that have left a lasting impression of wisdom for generations is perennial, and there's a constant birth and renewal that happens with, for example, the classics. Why are they classics? Because they're worth returning to, and they seem to reveal something time and time again.
There's so much here that we're going to unpack in this special episode on May 22nd. We're going to look at some of the specific real world things that were happening in 1843, 1844, the dawn of the Enlightenment. We're going to look at some of the spiritual analogies and what they might mean. This is going to be a wonderful hour-long discussion that we hope you'll join us on in celebration of that special holy day, May 22nd, May 23rd. It begins at sunset the day, May 22nd, on the day that Bob declared his mission, 24 hours before Samuel Morse unleashed on the world the first lightning message, "What hath God wrought?" pulled from Numbers 23, verse 23. We're going to unpack a lot in that hour. Please join us.